Hello, my love, and welcome back to the Energy Expansion Podcast. Once a month, we have a live studio audience who joins us, and that's today. We do these at the end of every month, which means right now in real time, we are nearing the end of October. And there's a couple of different pieces that we are going to bring together. Last week, episode 41 was inspired by, and we're going to have a few more of these special Q&A from our DKC Soul Fam and Energy Expansion listeners, but I had a couple of questions come through, and I had shared that episode last week. I'm so curious if you had a chance to listen to it, what your thoughts were. I do know that a lot of people who are in that transitionary phase of wanting to leave whatever job, role, or career they're in to make a change. And that was a really big part of what last week's episode was all about. I know that for many of you, that episode was really helpful, inspiring, comforting in some ways, because I probably for the first time, I don't want to say for the first time ever, but for the first time in a really long time, I shared the fullness of what it looked like in the very early days of starting my business. There was a lot of questions around that. And there were actually some follow-up questions between that episode being released and then just a few days later, us being here together for prepping episode. This is ultimately going to be episode 42. And the question was around this concept of going all in. I'm pretty sure I said that in various ways, perhaps those exact words in multiple occasions on the last episode. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, along with some other things that I'm feeling really inspired by as we're rounding out the month of October and getting ready to step into the month of November. So today, what we're going to talk about is what it means to go all in on something without burning out, how you can align your energy, your mindset, and your actions so that self-trust becomes your new norm if it's not already. And there's a challenge, a personal challenge that just dropped through this morning while I was dropping off all my kids off at school. This idea came through and has me feeling really excited about November. And I'm going to invite you to join me in that. As we kick this off, I really want you to take a moment to think about, for you, what going all in means. And the reason I want to first bring you into that before I share my perspective is because what that means for me is very likely going to look very different for you. And I want you to honor that. I want you to be clear around that. I want you to think about what is an area of your life, a result or an outcome right now in this moment that you're feeling called to go all in on. As we really think about what's ahead for you, where are you feeling inspired to bring this energy of all inness? And those of you who are tuning in live right now, the incredible women inside of Energy Expansion Academy, I'm so glad we have a nice full house today. You can share those things with me in the Zoom chat. I'd love to hear from you. And then for anyone else listening, first and foremost, we are looking towards the future and what's ahead. The other thing I want you to consider is when you turn around and you look back at some previous season of your life, and it can be any area of your life that you're looking at, I'm really curious, where have you gone all in? And what has that looked like for you? I feel like the way that I'm wired through my human design and my gene keys and my astrology, and even when you look at the nature of the work that I do, the way that I serve, the conversations that light me up, this whole thing that we're talking about today, all of these concepts, I feel like are deeply woven into my DNA. For as long as I can remember, I've been so curious about and inspired by what makes people tick. And as cliche as it can sometimes sound, I have always been really interested in meeting the version of me at my peak states. Not to say that I don't love myself in all of the other states, but there's something about excellence and going above and beyond and keeping my promises to myself and giving whatever I'm working on, giving it all I've got, and then getting to really enjoy the fruits of my labor and my energy and my efforts. And I have a feeling, if you're anything like me, that this is speaking to you. And so, in the context of the conversation we were having last time, what I was bringing you into, just a little recap. When I left my job to start my coaching business, if you were there, then you know I was not actually all in. In the first 6 to even 12 months of starting my business, it was a lot of this wavering, this wobbling, this being on the fence. And what I shared in last week's episode was the exhaustion that came with that back and forth energy. And there was something really beautiful about all of that, because it was the constant wavering that had me realize, Dani, girl, you cannot do this anymore. You have to make a choice. You literally owe it to yourself to have the experience of knowing that you gave this whole coaching business thing every ounce of you. And if you're not willing to do that, then just please don't do it at all. And that, the all or nothing, I don't think that that's always a very helpful mindset. That's not how we're all wired to thrive. I actually don't think that's how I'm wired to thrive. But when you spend 6 to 12 months in that exhaustive spinning, you're really left, or at least I was left, with no other choice. And so I want to answer this question. I wanted to first invite you into it. But my definition of being all in on something is, I want to be really intentional with how describe this to you, how I give you my personal definition. A part of this is, I want to say, not having a plan B, C, or D, right? In some ways, this sounds so dramatic, but it feels like burning the bridges, the metaphorical bridges to the way that you used to do things, your old life, your old career. Some of the ways I'm describing this could send your nervous system, your body, into a state of panic. And that's not what I want to do, because can I just tell you, deep down, what you know to be true and what I know to be true is that you can always change your mind. You can change your mind at any moment in time. You could burn the metaphorical bridges, head down a particular path, decide that you don't like that path, and turn back around. Recreate something that feels more like what you wanted, or create something completely new on top of what the other new thing you were already creating. And so this isn't like the end all be all, but it's this mentality of, I owe it to myself to know what it looks like, to know what it feels like, to give something, a path, a concept, an idea, to give it my all for a certain amount of time. All right, love, real quick pause, because I have to tell you about something that is truly life-changing. If you've been in my world for any amount of time, then there is a 99.9% chance that you have heard me talk about Energy Expansion Academy, which is my signature group coaching program where I teach the exact tools, rituals, mindset shifts that helped me create a life that goes beyond my wildest dreams and has transformed the lives of hundreds of women that I've had the honor of serving. And for the first time ever, it is now available as a self-paced experience. That means you get to move through this powerful transformation on your own terms, in your own timing, and in full alignment with your life. This is for the woman who's ready to shift her energy, elevate her mindset, and finally become the most confident, fulfilled, and successful version of herself. without the hustle, without the overwhelm, and without the second guessing. If you've been feeling the nudge to join us inside of EEA, then this, my love, is your sign. You'll find the link in the show notes or just DM me EEA on Instagram and I'll personally send it your way. Now, let's get back to the episode that you came for. And now, being completely honest, going back to the start of my business, which inspired this entire conversation and this follow-up question, which I think is so brilliant, I didn't necessarily give myself, if I did, I don't remember, I might have, to be honest. It was a very long time ago. It was 11 years ago. I don't think I necessarily said, you have 365 days, you have 1 year, you have 18 months. It was just, okay, you cannot keep doing this wobble. You are going to move in one direction. That direction is forward in progression of where it is that you ultimately want to go, which for me was building a impactful, high value, profitable coaching business. And hello, that's where we are today. And so when it comes to being all in on something, I would say go all in on your plan. If you need to, if it feels good and helpful for you, you can give yourself a date, a deadline, a timeline. I would say at the bare minimum, go all in on whatever it is that you desire for no less than 90 days. And I'm not choosing a random number when it comes to creating positive change, when it comes to building habits, when it comes to real transformation. There's lots of science and research that backs 90 days as being a really powerful and sustainable amount of time to create change in literally any area of your life. And so as you're listening right now, I'm so curious, like I said at the beginning, if there's something coming to mind when you think about the energy of being all in on something. And what if you let today be day one of your 90-day journey? And, if the thing that you're really wanting to go all in on is something really big, like building a new business, changing a career, many of you know the next episode is going to be all about this gut reset that I've been on. And really, oh my goodness, fam, yesterday was day 30 of my second 30 days. And so technically 60 straight days of the most intense health journey I've ever been on. And the results have been astronomical, from the weight loss, which is exciting, to how my clothes fit, to how my mind feels, to how my tummy feels, to the whites of my eyes, my energy levels. It's insane. And what I know for sure is I would not be able to experience the fullness of these results if I did not give myself 2 solid months. And I'm not done at this point. I'm going to go on to continue this journey. And so if you're wanting to do a complete overhaul in your career, for me recently, it's looked like my health. I've been more dedicated to my health these last 60 days than I've ever been in my entire 38 years on the planet. And that's saying a lot because I've invested a lot of money in different health things in the past. I have gotten really great results. I have been on some version of all in around my health. That's clearly just the thing that's up for me right now. For you, it might look like creating a complete and total overhaul in your marriage, in your partnership. If you don't have a partner right now and you want one, it might look like the way that you're showing up and who you're being to attract your ideal partner. It might be around your finances. Where are you craving this energy of all-in-ness? I'm so curious. And so the other thing that I want to share here is, as much as all in is about doing, this is not about running yourself into the ground. I do not think that being all in means that you work at something 24/7, right? I don't think it means sleepless nights. It's funny because there was a past version of me who would have thought that, who would have defined all in as sacrificing my health to get a specific result in my career or in finances or in some other area of life. And that's just not the truth anymore. It can be even less about doing and more about removing the exits, which is what we're talking about. And you can do that temporarily. If you say, we're going to burn the bridges, you don't need to go into complete panic, but give yourself a time frame. All inness is also less about pressure. I think that there is a healthy level of pressure that we can put on ourselves when we're wanting to achieve something. Whenever I say pressure, specifically in the realm of personal professional development, I often think of the metaphor of creating a diamond. In order to create a diamond, there is a level of pressure that has to be applied. No pressure, no diamond. And so I don't want to knock this completely, but I think that we want to be really mindful of how we go about creating our outcomes. And I feel like I talk about this a lot on the podcast, and it's because it was a really big part of my personal journey. For a majority of my life, I lived so heavily in not just my masculine energy, but I want to go as far as saying like toxic masculine energy, forcing, pushing, manipulating situations to get them exactly how I want to. It's so hard for me to say that because I don't consider myself as someone who's manipulative. When I hear the word manipulative, I think of being deceitful and someone who lies and steals, and that's not really what it is. In fact, I didn't actually start connecting with the characteristics of manipulation until I was learning about the depths and the roots of people pleasing. And when I was digging into that, which is like a lot of my history, is abandoning myself in attempts of receiving love from other people, which is one of the many ways that people pleasing can manifest. But at the heart of people pleasing is just manipulation, if you think about it. And the first time someone shared that with me, I was a little offended. I was quite defensive because I thought, I'm not manipulative. I'm kind and I am honest, and integrity is one of my highest standards personally and professionally. Like in my relationships, in my real life, and also the way that I conduct myself in business, in group settings, here on my podcast, one on one. And so I struggled with that for a while, but deep down, I knew that I could pull the right levers and I could make the things happen exactly as I wanted to until that stopped working, until I was literally physically ill. And so I just want to make sure that as we're having this conversation, you know that I'm speaking from the energy of all inness, being all in, going all in, giving it all you've got from a place of integrity for your nervous system, from a place that weaves in a balance of the masculine and feminine together, the structure, the practicality, the strategy. Those are more masculine characteristics. And then that creates space for this beautiful feminine energy, which is more flowy and intuitive, tapped in, tuned in, turned on, following what lights you up. I hope that this is helpful because I feel like at a surface level, when we're talking about this energy of being all in, we can look at this from a lot of different perspectives. And that's probably true for you because what I just walked you through was how in the past I looked at this is very different from how I look at it now and what I'm inviting you into. And so I want to share here some pillars of going all in. Some of these we've already touched on, but I really sat with this question and I wanted to provide a lot of tangible value in how I responded to this today. And so I'm actually a lot of times our last handful of podcast episodes, I'm like literally completely riffing. And today I was a little more methodical. Don't get me wrong. I love a good intuitive riff. I think that those are really incredibly powerful. And also there's sometimes something to be said for having an intentional plan and notes. They're both good. They're both valuable. I love them. So number one is having a clear outcome in association to whatever it is that you're going all in on. For me, recently, it was this journey of doing a complete overhaul around my health, which again, I'm not going to go too deep into because the next podcast episode that we have roll out next week, it's going to be like a super deep dive. But I know when I was first starting my business, it looked like having X amount of clients, serving X amount of people in a given 12-month period. I've had years in my business when I was really excited about reaching certain financial milestones. So having a clear outcome. And again, at the time of this recording, this is going to come out just a few days before November 1st. And so if you want to do this in a smaller stretch, you could use this energy, this topic, this episode of going all in. You could really, like the invitation here, again, I have an invitation for you for November, but you could look at what do you want to go all in on in the month of November. But my real suggestion is to give yourself at the very least until December 31st of this year, but really a full 90 days. Oh my goodness, buckle up. This is so crazy to think about. But 90 days from now, we will be rounding out January of 2026. So giving yourself those 90 days. And on one of our podcast episodes recently, I had shared with you that I have a theme. It was actually 6 months out. It's going to take me through to the end of March, the first quarter of next year, March 31st. But it's this theme called embodied evolution. And I'll weave that in because it kind of ties into the November challenge that I'm excited to take on and I'm going to invite you into. But coming back to this, the 5 pillars of going all in. Number 1, having a clear outcome. What is the thing you're going all in on? And if you want to give yourself a time frame, what is that time frame? And then really being mindful to make choices that are in alignment with that. If there's something that feels like a distraction already right off the bat, as you're hopefully writing this down and getting inspired by this and thinking about what this is going to look like for you, if there are current distractions, going all in also means eliminating those distractions. Number 2, having visible commitments. If you're anything like me, then you know that if you don't write it down, if it doesn't live in your calendar, then it very likely does not exist. It's just in my world, if it's not in my notes app, if it's not in, I have a digital to-do list that I really like. I think it's called Tick Tick. I can't remember if it's free or if it's not. I paid like a teeny tiny amount. I have it on my phone. I also have it on my desktop computer. Many of you know that I'm a paper planner kind of a gal. I have been since I was 12 or 13 years old. There has not been a single year since I started using my paper planner as a teenager. I've literally used a paper planner every year since then. And with my business, I have a Google Calendar. And I'm saying all of this because there are so many places where I know that if I'm committed to something, I don't necessarily put it in all of those places, but I put it in at least one, if not a few of the places where I manage my time. And where I manage my time also helps me determine where I'm putting my attention, my effort, my energy. Something else that can also be helpful when it comes to commitments is accountability. This is why many people hire coaches. This is one of the number one things that I do with my clients is when they say they want something, we break it down. I have them make it be really specific, and then we're checking in on a regular basis, sometimes weekly, if not monthly, of, okay, here's what you said you wanted. Tell me where you're at with that. What's working? What's not working? What is getting in the way of your progress? This is one of the number one reasons why people hire me as their coach. This is one of the number one reasons why I hire my own coaches. And I know for a fact that I thrive in community. I really, truly believe that most people do, maybe some more than others. And that is the way that I am. this insane health journey that I've been on, and this goes for anything, like for the most part, any dramatic progress that I've made in my health, in my business, in my finances, even in my marriage, what I've experienced in my marriage this year feels literally life-changing. And guess what? At the beginning of this year, I signed up for a program specifically geared towards marriage and motherhood. These things don't happen by accident. And so I put myself in communities, in spaces and places where we are all absolutely on our own journey, right? Like I'm not trying to recreate what anyone else's life looks like, but I want to know that I'm surrounded by other women who are playing a really freaking big game. And so visible commitments is you need to write these things down. You need to write them down where you're going to see them again and again. And also, how are you going to be accountable? Do you have a coach? Do you have a mentor? Do you have a buddy? You don't necessarily have to pay for somebody. You can have a bestie check-in. Me and my best friend, we do this almost on a weekly basis, where if we're not on the phone, then we're on Zoom. If we're not on Zoom, then we're voice noting about what our goals and commitments are for that week. And we're checking in on each other. So this feels big. Number 3 is having non-negotiable baselines. For me, this works really well. And I'm going to keep bringing it back to what I know works well for me, because I want to invite you into getting really curious what works best for you. And so for me, these are the non-negotiables. I also like to call these my NMWs, my no matter what. Bare minimum, the least amount of effort I put in, what am I committed to doing no matter what? And this is going to vary from season to season. If my big focal point in life, like my deepest desires, are geared towards health, then my daily non-negotiables, my no matter whats, are going to err more heavily on things that have to do with my health and nutrition and fitness and movement, right? When there's seasons of being like, okay, I'm going to put on my blinders and I'm really going to go all in on my business. There's like a caveat that's coming up here. There's going to be different no matter what's non-negotiables. And the ideal thing about what we're talking about right now is that when you have these non-negotiables and you do them consistently, again, for a minimum of 60 to 90 days, they end up becoming second nature. And so when you stick with them, they take less effort. They take less energy. It literally just becomes part of your identity, which is a really beautiful thing about this journey. So the caveat that was coming to mind, you can be hyper-focused on your business and on your health. You can be all in on marriage and finances. Like, I'm not saying you have to choose one or the other, but a lot of times if there's an area of life that's slipping and it's negatively impacting other areas of your life, what we'll notice, and this is proven, there's research that proves this, when you pour into one area of your life in a positive way, the byproduct is other areas of your life will improve. So I'm not saying you have to choose one thing at the cost of other important areas. That's not at all what I'm suggesting. I don't want that for you or for me. But I have to tell you, when I've gone all in on my business and simultaneously done a really great job of balancing family time, those two things feed into each other in a really beautiful, harmonious way, where there's been other seasons where it felt like those were in direct conflict. And so I want to remind you that you have a lot of say in the matter when it comes to the way that you experience the various areas of your life. Okay. So number 3 is choosing your own non-negotiables. What is your bare minimum? What is your baseline? I like to call them my no matter what. No matter what happens today, these are the things that I'm going to get done. Number 4 is removing the exits, not letting yourself off the hook for a certain amount of time. Not saying, oh, I promised myself that I was going to do this thing twice a week and I don't feel like doing it today, so I'm not going to. Sure, maybe if you don't feel like doing it today, then you're going to reschedule it and it's still going to get done and you're going to keep your promises to yourself. We are building this muscle of consistency. And Confidence, which is one of the number one things that women come to me wanting to experience more of, confidence is a direct byproduct of consistency, of keeping your promises to yourself. And so, number 4 is where it really comes into the parts of the conversation that we were having earlier around burning the bridges. There is no plan B, let alone C, D, E, F, G. This is the plan, and this is what we're going to stick to for this amount of time. And as I'm doing this, you're listening on the audio, but on the video, I've like got my hand out and it feels a little strict and a little rigid. And I personally can sometimes rebel when things feel overly rigid, but like really having a loving, stern talk with yourself. And it's like, here's where we're going. Here's what we're doing. And we're doing this because you, my love, in my case, it's me. In your case, it's you. You, my love, you deserve to experience what's on the other side of this. The goodness, the joy, the happiness, the fulfillment, the self-trust, the passion, the inspiration, the confidence, the whatever it is, any and all of the above is on the other side of you seeing this through, is what you get to relish in, soak in, experience from this all-in energy. And the last one, number 5, is going all in on courage. Today, I've already referred to getting your reps in, having this practice. Reps is definitely a gym term, right? We do this many reps of this exercise, whatever it is. And that applies to the identity that we're stepping into, the actions that we're taking. And if you're not used to that, if you're not used to going all in, being all in whatever that means to you, remember at the very beginning, I invited you into defining what this means for you. If that's something that you're historically not very good at, that's okay. That's okay. This is an invitation for you to build that muscle. And there's a 100% chance that whatever the thing that you want to go all in on is important to you. And if it's important to you, it's going to require courage. Really lovingly holding yourself to the fire of what it is that you want, the thing that you're committed to. One thing that I thought about after recording that podcast episode last week that I didn't actually share was the year I knew I was going to leave my job, which I did. I did leave my job in that calendar year, which I've just got to give myself a pat on the back because I know that that's a goal that a lot of people set, and it's a big goal and it's a scary goal and it requires a lot. And so I know a lot of people who typically aren't able to make it happen within that calendar year. And guess what? That is perfectly a-okay. You set the time frame of the goal. You do what you can in that time frame. When you get to the end of that time frame, you reevaluate. And if you need to adjust, then my love, that's what you do. But here's something that made a world of a difference for me. And this is really what inspired pillar number 5, which is where we're at right now in what it means to go all in, was many of you know I choose a word or a theme for the year. And I've been doing this for honestly for as long as I can remember. This is a very coachy thing to do, a very like personal, professional development thing to do. I've been doing this since before I knew the coaching industry existed. Not only since before becoming a coach, but like I didn't know that this was a thing that people did. It just felt right and intuitive for me. And so the year that I knew I wanted to leave my job, my word for that year was courage. And I literally woke up every single day and I asked myself, what would courage do today? And I let that be my guide, not just on a daily basis, not just looking myself dead in the eyes every single morning in the mirror before I left my house as I was getting ready for work, but every time I was faced with a choice where I felt myself start to shrink, I would say, what would courage do? What would courage choose? What would courage say? If you were the most courageous version of yourself in this moment, what step would you take? What direction would you go in? And so Courage and all inness are like BFFs. They're twin sisters for the sake of this conversation. And so for you, it might be the word courage. For you, it might be choosing a similar word, theme, or North Star, but having something that you can come back to 100% of the time for whatever it is that your journey looks like right now. That is going to be the thing that keeps you on track, keeps you moving in the direction that you ultimately want to be going in. And we're going to segue into this other part of the conversation. And I want to give you a preview. I'm going to actually bring you into this. I wasn't planning on talking about this on this particular episode because we're going to go much deeper into it next week. But on the health journey, I want to pause. The context is I'm going to give you what my North Star is right now. And this might change from this week to next week. I'm playing with this because it's not like the sexiest word. I want to come up with a different way to say this. But on this health journey that I've been on, it's being led by a dear friend of mine. Her name is Jolie. And she's really the brains behind the business side of this beautiful health thing. But when it comes to the actual protocol and the health journey and the wisdom and all of that, it is her boyfriend, Michael, who's so incredibly knowledgeable. And I don't trust just anybody with my health, but again, I'll go into this much deeper next week. I trust him for so many reasons, and I'll share those things with you on our next podcast episode. But he kept using this word throughout the last 60 days, these two 30-day journeys that I've been on with the two of them inside of this amazing community. The word that he uses is uncommon. Uncommon. And he talks about how he has uncommon health. And it's true. When you hear about the way that he lives, he tells stories about strangers that come up to him and comment on his aura, on his physique, things that friends used to say to him and loved ones now say to him. And he describes it as uncommon. And every time he said that word, I would feel something. It felt like a fire was being lit within me. And yesterday, I was at church and I take my iPad to church and I take notes. And I just kept thinking about this theme of uncommon health and was like, yeah, uncommon health. And then it was uncommon wealth and uncommon success and uncommon faith and uncommon marriage and uncommon motherhood and uncommon joy and happiness and fulfillment and confidence and passion and all of these things. And I put words to what I feel like I've always been such a stand for. And I didn't always have a way to consciously articulate that. And the reason I'm sharing this right now is because my North Star is I am someone who's committed to uncommon results. And that means that I have to do uncommon things, that I have to make uncommon choices. And in short, there's going to be like a better, sexier way. I think this concept is very sexy, but like it's sort of dry the way that it's coming through. I hope that you're being lit up by this and the way that I've been. I want to find my own DKC Dani spin to this. But this theme of all things uncommon means that I have to make choices that literally veer away from the norms of what we are taught, of what other people are doing, because I don't want what 98% of the rest of people I know have or they're doing. And it's not so much having material things, but there's not a whole lot of people in my life that when I look at their health, I'm like, yeah, sign me up for that. I'm not inspired by a lot of people's marriages or the way that they parent or even their financial situation. And so I'm realizing the invitation here for me in true manifesting generator fashion is to really create my own rules. And the number one reason why I'm sharing this with you is because perhaps you're feeling that as well. And I want to invite you into that. Okay. So when it comes to the North Star, the thing that I'm really sinking my energetic teeth into to keep me on track with where I'm going and what I desire and what I'm creating, for me, it has to do with this theme of uncommon results. doing things in a different way, in my own way. And that feels important because it's really easy to look around and think, oh, well, if that thing's working for her, maybe I should do it. Or if they're doing that thing over there and they seem happy, maybe I should do it, right? I am unhooking myself from all of that. And if you feel called to do this as well, this is your formal invitation. And that's the perfect segue into the final part of this conversation. I've alluded to this a few different times, but November, the challenge that Dani is taking on for November, I'm so excited to share this with you. This just came through in the form of a divine download. I teach inside of Energy Expansion Academy different intuitive gifts. I call them your intuitive superpowers. And there's 4 main clairs. There's technically more than that, but there's 4 main ones. So there's clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, clairaudience, which is clear hearing, claircognizance, which is clear knowing, and clairsentience, which is clear feeling. And my 2 strongest gifts are claircognizance, clear knowing, and clairsentience, clear feeling. And so I'm sharing this with you because I'll just be minding my own business. It's often when I'm walking, when I'm moving my body, and a lot of times when I'm driving, where all of a sudden an idea will come through. And that's exactly what happened this morning. So this morning, I dropped my kids off at school. I'm driving home. And what am I doing? I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about the women inside of Energy Expansion Academy. No joke. And it's Monday at the time of this recording. And I go live with the women inside of EEA every Monday. And so I'm like, okay, God, universe, spirit, life, what do you want them to know today? What can I share that's going to make a difference for them? And I was like, okay, where are we energetically? It's the last few days of October. We're rounding out the final week of October. And that was when I was like, okay, cool. So we're going to finish out October really strong. And me personally, I want to start ideating about what the month of November is going to hold. Like, what do I want for the month of November? November. And I was like, okay, cool. There's literally a word, the simplest, most powerful word, one of the most powerful words, which is no, in the word November. So I started thinking about, what do I want to say no to? If I were to really be kind of cheeky, what is my November going to be saying no to? And immediately, like nothing else, full stop, period, point blank, it was no F's given. No F's given. What if we showed up in the month of November like we didn't give a flying F about what anybody thought? What if we allowed ourselves to be fully self-expressed, completely unapologetic? And I started getting so excited about this, especially when just yesterday I was talking about uncommon results and how that is going to require that I detach, that I disconnect, that I cut off the perspective and the thoughts and the opinions of everyone other than myself, right? And so it all fit together so beautifully. And I was sharing this with the women inside of Energy Expansion Academy today during our live. And a bunch of the women were like, yep, we're here for this. And so I am taking on the challenge of radical self-permission, unapologetic expression, as if I give 0 F's. No F's given November. Okay. Let me know if that's something that you're going to take on. Send me a message. And maybe you're not quite there yet. I have this whole list. When it comes to your time and energy, maybe there's no more multitasking. Maybe it's so funny that I said maybe, because maybe there's no more maybe. Maybe there's no more waffling, wobbling, sitting on the fence. It's you getting really clear about what is your yes and what is your no, and you honoring that. No more saying yes out of guilt, people pleasing, or obligation. No more perfectionism. No more apologizing for your standards, your expectations, your wants, or your needs. No more dimming your light or your joy. I want you to really start thinking about, what are you a no to? And one of our very first episodes of the month of October, so this feels quite fitting, is we had talked about frequency. And I had invited you into something known as a frequency fast. What is something literally that you can say no to that has been messing with your energy field, messing with your mind, messing with your emotions? And if you weren't one of the many women who took me up on that invitation in October, I'm so proud of you. I know that so many of you gave up something really big. Some of it was around health. I know that some of you gave up Instagram. Some of you gave up watching Netflix streaming services, which was how my original frequency fast started earlier this year, giving up where you were consuming certain information, like watching the news or listening to news-based podcasts. So if you did not say no to something for the sake of a frequency fast, this is an invitation to dive back into that. So I loved being here with you today. A little recap. We really got to dive into what it looks like, what it means to go all in. I walked you through a 5-step process, the pillars of all inness, invited you to look at where you're willing to go, where you're wanting to go, where you're feeling called to go all in of some area of your life, and creating space for you to dig really deep into that. I shared some of the things that have been inspiring me around this theme of uncommon health and wealth and results and success and all of the things that matter to me, and really giving myself permission and simultaneously giving you permission to write your own rules. And then lastly, inviting you to choose a theme for November. And if no F's given November feels fun, then know that you are going to be in incredible company. So I love you so much. Until next time, I cannot wait to see you on the next episode of the Energy Expansion Podcast.